everyone, and welcome to the Business Events Podcast, a podcast that hosts interviews and discussion panels with experts from the business events industry and academia. I am Monica Martins, and today my co-hosts Raquel Brito and Xavier Vidares and I will interview Dr. Rob Davidson, the Managing Director of Mice Knowledge, a London-based consultancy specialising in research, education and training services for the meetings and events industry. Dr. Davidson's main areas of expertise are conferences and incentive travel, and he has written 7 books on these themes, including his latest publication, Business Events, the book that we referenced so many times during our studies. So, Professor, welcome, and thank you so much for accepting to join us today. It's a pleasure to have you with us. We have been speaking about a new reality in the business events industry after COVID-19. What's your view regarding the challenges and opportunities that the pandemic brought to the professionals in this industry?
Okay, well, thank you very much, Monica. And by the way, thank you all for your very kind invitation to be interviewed today. It's always a pleasure to be connected with Edinburgh in some way because it's my city and I love it very much. Well, challenges and opportunities. I think most people in our industry will be more aware of the challenges which we've been facing, well, for over a year now. But I also believe that, yes, there are opportunities and some benefits. If we look carefully enough, some benefits from what has happened to us in the last year. Of course, there's no escaping from the fact that our industry everywhere in the world has been absolutely devastated, and we must really think about all the men and women whose careers are in our industry and how many of them have been struggling with this important change in the world which we are dealing with now. So the challenges, I think, are well known. We are an industry based on bringing people together, often in large numbers and in close proximity in the same place. That's what we do. We are an industry creating events for large numbers of people where they can exchange ideas, where they can meet each other, make new business contacts, eat together, drink together, relax together in the evenings, and make new contacts. And of course, those are exactly the kinds of opportunities which have been, well, impossible in most countries since 1 year ago. So our industry has had to adapt very, very quickly to something very extreme. And everyone is waiting for the question about when we will be able to meet again as normal. And perhaps that's going to be one of your questions later. So the challenges are technology. And here we have today with this interview an example of using technology in a situation which normally would have been face-to-face with us both in the same place at the same time. So the challenges we've met to some extent with virtual events, hybrid events, which we may want to speak about a little more later. And of course, I think those have been very useful. Companies, corporate meetings in particular, have found them a usable, viable substitute for face-to-face meetings. But I think the opportunities are arising from our obligation as a business events industry to really look at what we do and the value that we offer as an industry with face-to-face events. And I think if one thing we've learned in the last 12 months is that face-to-face events have many advantages over virtual online events like this one. So those advantages give us opportunities in the future to make a very strong case for bringing back face-to-face events. We have seen very clearly, in very clear focus, the advantages of face-to-face events and the limitations, I would say, of online virtual events. And we must keep those advantages and limitations in our minds, because going ahead, we're going to have to make a very strong case for business events coming back. Because I think a lot of organizations, a lot of companies in particular, in the last year have looked at virtual events and said, wow, you know, these are okay. Why were we putting people on planes and trains and into hotels for so long to go to a meeting? Yeah, let's continue with virtual meetings. And I think at that moment, we as an industry must be there with our very strong arguments for bringing back face-to-face.
Yes, absolutely. So last year, important events within the events industry, such the IBTM, had to switch to virtual or even didn't happen at all. Do you believe that this year these events will take place virtually, or do you think that some parts of these events will be permanently virtual henceforth, or how do you see this?
Yes, it's a very important question. I think everyone in our industry, or in tourism, for example, remembers the moment when the world event in Berlin was cancelled for tourism, and that was really an important moment when we all thought, "Wow, this pandemic is serious." That was in Berlin, and then we saw IMEX, we saw IBTM World being cancelled basically, and going online, as you've said. Yes, I think that this year, definitely those exhibitions will have a strong virtual hybrid element, and they will take place hopefully with a good face-to-face element as well. Well, especially for IBTM at the end of the year, it's difficult to say. It all depends on the pandemic and how we manage to overcome that. But I think that one very important factor will be confidence. The confidence that ordinary men and women feel about getting on a plane, spending nights in a hotel, going to restaurants, going into a big event like IBTM World in Barcelona. We honestly do not know. Governments can say what they like. They can say our doors are open, everybody, welcome back. Come to sunny Barcelona for IBTM World. But if people in the industry feel lacking in confidence about traveling internationally, about spending time with lots of other people under the same roof, in the same place, then they won't come. And for those people, there is going to have to be a virtual hybrid element where they can get some of the experience of those events without being there physically in person. So confidence. We need to wait until people in large numbers feel confident enough that they can return to face-to-face events with no harm or no risk or low risk to their health. That's when they will come back as we used to know them, or close to the way we used to know them.
Yeah, I suppose it will take some time for that. And on another note, business events are being considered as extremely important for the economic recovery of destinations post-COVID-19. What are your views regarding this topic?
Yes, economic recovery. Well, I think we've learned in the past 12 months just how many people working in transport, working in hospitality, how their lives are affected when large numbers of people stay away. The number of people in those industries who've lost their job, or who have been furloughed in their jobs. These are numbers, and they're all over the world, of course. So from one point of view, simply getting people back to work will depend partly on people traveling again, people attending business events like the ones we're interested in. But I think that in a broader sense than that, economic recovery has always depended upon business contacts, people meeting other people in the same industry, people coming to trade shows, exhibitions, seeing new products. We know, for example, that international exhibitions stimulate exports, imports, and that's a very powerful part of any country's economy. So absolutely, business events, bringing people together in the same industry, are a vital part of economic recovery, and we need to see that coming back as soon as possible. I would also say, and this is not so much about economic recovery as recovery in general, that after this gap in time, this 1 year gap when it has been very difficult for scientists, doctors, medical professionals to come together as they used to at their association conferences, there's a massive potential demand now from those people to come together again, to talk, to exchange ideas, to create knowledge, to transfer knowledge. And my goodness me, we have a lot to speak about, because we've had a whole year when it's been harder for those professionals, especially scientists and people in the medical professions, to come together. And when they need to come together now more than ever, they need to speak about the pandemic and how it happened, why it happened, how can we avoid another one. And there's going to be huge demand from people like that to attend their international and national conferences, to finally get together and speak to each other.
Yes, I can't wait for that. So this topic is also very important for sustainability of the sector, of our industry, and also for the destinations. In which ways can business events contribute to the sustainability of cities and communities?
Well, I think one very important trend that we were seeing long before the pandemic was the move towards sustainability in our industry. And really, it's thanks to your generation, who care much more about the green meetings, sustainability, avoiding pollution of the environment. That was a very, very encouraging trend. And if anything, it's going to be intensified by the experience of the pandemic. So sustainability is not just a short trend, it's going to grow even more. And one reason for that are the men and women your age who are coming into our industry now and telling us we need to do things more sustainably. Our industry involves large numbers of people traveling internationally, often by air. We need to find some way to moderate the impact, the negative impact, which conferences and other business events can actually have. We have much more knowledge about that now. And the trend towards green meetings is really unstoppable. I would like to see sustainability implemented in a wider sense, not only looking at the natural environment, but looking more broadly at the destination and the people living and working in the destination, their lives, because their lives are impacted upon when large numbers of people arrive in their towns. And I think that a trend, again, that was coming along before the pandemic was a move towards, well, corporate social responsibility is one way to describe it. I like to call it the social legacy of conferences, where the participants actively do something for the local people, for the local communities when they are in the destination. It was beginning to happen more and more, and we were seeing wonderful initiatives where conference participants would make a donation to local charities, for example, or the speakers would go into local, if it was a medical conference, for example, they would go into a local hospital and do a master class with the doctors there. There is so much that conference participants, conference speakers can do for the local people when they are in that destination. It can be something simple like spending a couple of hours clearing up trash in a local beauty spot, working with a food bank for a few hours, something to show that our industry has a heart as well as a head, and that we care about not only about the place, the physical environment and the quality of the air, for example, but we care about the people, in particularly the disadvantaged people who will never go into that beautiful conference center in the middle of Edinburgh, for example. I know Edinburgh, and I know the EICC. It's wonderful, fantastic venue. Really love it. But I can take you from there 10, 15 minutes walking, and we are in a poor part of Edinburgh. Now the people, they have shoes, they have homes, but they are disadvantaged people compared with the men and women who arrive at the EICC for a conference, nice clothes, fantastic phones. They are the lucky ones. And I think more and more, as part of sustainability, we need to think about the unfortunate people who are not so lucky as we are and do something about it.
Well, Mr. Davidson, it's really a big pleasure having you here today, and I think we are enjoying a lot this conversation. Well, speaking of you are from here, from Edinburgh. Well, you are not based here, but you know pretty well the city. As well, you have this global view about what's going on in business events. So, specifically regarding Edinburgh and maybe as well as Scotland, how do you feel about the new situation that we are now, this new era for the United Kingdom and for Edinburgh and Scotland from now after the Brexit thing came finally something that is real, that is here. What is your view about this?
Yeah, thank you, Xavier. Wow, what a question. I began by saying that the pandemic had brought many more challenges than opportunities. And I'm afraid I think the same thing about Brexit. We are really still waiting to see those promised advantages of leaving the European Union. And from a personal perspective, I really wish we had never done it. I'm a true European, and I believe that's not a good move to move away from our partners in the European Union. But there we are, and it's a fact. I think one of my principal concerns about it, and it's also about our industry, is that there will be less collaboration between, for example, scientists and academics in the United Kingdom, including Scotland, and scientists and academics in the European Union. We know that many important research projects, scientific projects, are funded by or supported by the EU. And I'm very sad to think that some of our scientists working in the United Kingdom will be excluded from those projects. And similarly for our industry, I'm very nervous that organizers of European association conferences will think to themselves, oh, having it in the United Kingdom, there are new barriers to that, legislation, let's just have it in a European Union country to keep things simpler. That's my biggest concern about Brexit, and time will tell if I'm right to be worried about that.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Robert, first for came and talk with us. Other question. You have written remarkable reports forecasting the immediate future. Do you think that our ability to predict will be the same after 2020? Or do you think that situation like the current pandemic may become difficult to talk about trends and what's going to happen in the next year with regarding the business events industry?
Okay, Raquel, thank you very much. Well, it's certainly true that for many years I was writing a trends report every year for IBTM World. So it was always a great pleasure to travel to Barcelona to launch the report at the exhibition. 3 years ago, that work, I decided to pass it on to someone new and fresh. And it's my friend and my colleague, Alistair Turner, who now has the job of writing the IBTM Trends Report every year. And I recommend it to anyone watching this, because you can go online and download Alistair's report, and I can assure you that it will be time well spent reading that report. But I really do not envy him, because making any kind of prediction at the moment is incredibly difficult, mainly because the most important factor affecting the future of our world is out of our control. And we are everywhere waiting to see if we can defeat this terrible virus and have some degree of normality again. In the last year, I don't know how many times people have asked me the question, okay, Rob, when will we go back to normal? And I always say, listen, I don't know. But anyone who says that they do know, I would be very careful, because it's out of our control. We must wait until the scientists, the doctors have done their job, and until then I'm afraid to say the world will be a very unpredictable place. At the moment, when anyone contacts me and says, Rob, can you travel to our city and speak at our conference in October? I say, well, okay, I'm going to write it in my diary, but I'm going to write it in pencil, not in pen, because nothing is certain at the moment, and it will continue to be like that, I'm afraid, until we can honestly say that we are on top of the current situation. We're getting there, but when we will get the green light, I don't know.
Yeah, it's in connect. We don't know exactly where it will be the future, but we hope that soon everything could change. And what could be your message for all these young professional and students that we are finished their undergrad, postgraduate, like us? Any advice you like to share with us?
Well, my first message would be to say congratulations and thank you for choosing our industry. Our industry needs young men, young women with energy and talent and imagination. And I'm very happy when I see people like you three, because you are the future of our industry. And we are depending on you to take the industry forward. And so welcome to the business events industry. I'm sorry you're coming into the industry at a time like this, but it won't be like this forever. And I would say to prepare for the next step, which for all of you and all young people graduating is finding a job. Now, that was never easy. And of course, now it's going to be more difficult than ever, but not impossible. Every day on LinkedIn and in the magazines for the mice industry, I see jobs. So it's going to be tough, but do everything that you can to be one of those people who gets into our industry as soon as possible. That means not only working hard at your studies, but also volunteering to help, doing things like this. All of you taking this initiative to make these interviews with professionals, you know, this is something valuable that you can put on your CV, on your resume, and that's going to make you stand out. So I would say to everyone, do what you can to stand out when companies, organizations finally start recruiting in large numbers, which they will do, but do everything that you can to prepare for that moment. And volunteering, helping is a really powerful way to have something to put on your resume, which is a little bit different to someone who has simply studied, done well, and then graduated. I'm teaching in 3 European universities, Strasbourg, Lugano in Switzerland, and Krems in Austria. And I tell all my students the same thing. Work hard, but do more. Volunteer, get experience, and doing things like what you're doing now is wonderful. And good luck. Buena suerte to all of you, because you're going to need it.
Boa sorte. It's like we say boa sorte.
In Portugal, of course.
We will. We hope also. And how do you view the future for business event industry in general when we manage if we can say, to say so, control this situation, so this pandemic. How do you view the future?
I'm optimistic, Raquel. I'm optimistic because traveling to events in the same way as traveling for holidays is so much part of our life. And it's not going to go away because people, especially after the year that we've had, they realize the importance of these events more than ever. And they won't be satisfied for much longer about simply going online and having exchanges on Zoom and platforms like that. Everyone is hungry to come together again, to do all those things at conferences which you can't do on an online conference, like networking, just relaxing, shaking the hands of your colleagues, making new surprising business contacts. Those things are almost impossible in an online meeting. We know that Zoom, for example, just in the newspaper today, there was an article about Zoom fatigue. And I've experienced that so often myself. After a few hours in a Zoom meeting, you're exhausted. You're exhausted in a way that you were never exhausted by sitting in a conference center listening to speakers. So I'm optimistic about the future. We don't know, no one knows what it will look like. We can make some predictions that, for example, I honestly believe that extravagance will be out of fashion for quite a long time in our industry. So those 5-star hotels and champagne gala dinners, I think that people will hesitate before offering those because it's extravagant, it's expensive. And we've had a year where lots of people have lost their jobs, where money is not so plentiful for large sections of the population. So I think that we'll see less extravagance. We'll see much more attention paid to health, hygiene, cleanliness. I heard something a few weeks ago, which I remember. It said, clean is the new green. And I think it's so true. We will go to conferences, of course, but we will want to see frequent cleaning of the venue, of the chairs, of the tables. We'll want to see those cleaners a few times every day doing their job. That will reassure us. We want to see the door handles being wiped. It's small things which will make a big difference. So more attention to hygiene and health will be very important. Outdoor space, everyone talks now about the importance of ventilation. Well, if you're a venue with a garden or a terrace or a large balcony, use it. Use it for those coffee breaks, especially if you're in a country like the countries where you three come from. You have the climate. So let's go outside, not just to smoke, because you shouldn't smoke, but for some fresh air, some relaxation. I think we're going to see much more of that as well.
Yeah. And the last two questions. How can the people who are listening to us find and get in contact with you?
No problem. I would love it. I love it when people get in contact. My website, miceknowledge.com, is where you'll find my contact details. But you know, I always like to connect with people like yourselves on LinkedIn, for example, because it's where you should be now at your stage in your career. Everyone loves Facebook, of course, but you know that's okay for telling your friends what you did on Saturday night. But more professionally, there are platforms like LinkedIn which are much more important. But yeah, I recommend anyone who's interested to go onto my website. There are many resources for students, for example. So that's the best way to keep in touch. But we're an industry which is all about business contacts and networking, and we should do that as much as possible.
Thank you so much. Xavier, it's your turn.
Yeah. We have like a last question that we like to make to our guest. You know, maybe you have like a song or just or maybe a singer or that you used to listen to just to uplift a little bit, you know, the mood in the during the dark days, especially during this strange winter that we are living. So, what would be your recommendation or that song or that singer that really helps you to go through all this situation?
Well, thank you, Xavier. That's the most interesting question I've been asked. Which song? Well, I find myself, especially in this past year, and especially in the winter, as you say, that we've just had, there's one song, it's often in my mind, and it's maybe you're too young to know it, but it's a song by Stevie Wonder, and it's called, you know him? Fantastic.
I love Stevie Wonder.
He's great. I love him a lot, and especially the song A Place in the Sun. And don't worry, I'm really not going to sing it now, but there's a lovely song called A Place in the Sun, and there's a line, there's a place in the sun where there's hope for everyone. And that's a very powerful message for everybody. So listen to that song, A Place in the Sun.
Okay, but Monica looks like really like agree with the feeling.
Yes, absolutely.
It's a good one. Thank you.
Great.
Thank
Okay,
you
so
much,
that's it.
So much.
Thank you very much.
The song.
It's like quite a sensation, a feeling like to listen to you to say that we are the future of the industry. I mean, it's like, and we really want to thank you for this chance to have this interview with you, and yeah, really thanks.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode. Please follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn at the Business Events Podcast. Get in touch if you would like to be a guest in our podcast too. Our email is info@thebusinesseventspodcast.com. Thank you so much for listening.
Well, thank you very much for the very kind invitation. Everybody, you are the future, and boa sorte.
Boa sorte. Wow. Beautiful.
Bye everybody. Thank you. Good luck.
Thank
you so
much.
much.
You very much.
Bye.